So, I'm delighted to be speaking to the masterminds behind the hit game Unconscious Mind, set in Fin de Siècle Vienna and dealing with psychoanalysis. I'm here with Yoma, I'm here with Thanos, and I'm here with Jonathan Pack. Gentlemen, welcome.
Nice to see you, Ben.
Yeah, you too. So let's dive right in. Can you tell us how you got the initial concept for the game?
Well, funny enough, this game design started with my friends Zax and Laskas, and the initial idea was that it would be a game about feelings. We had a reference from the Pixar movie, I think it's Pixar, right? Inside Out, the one with the feelings inside the brain, etc. But soon enough, we realized that for one or another reason, this didn't help us in order to evolve the design. And I sit down and start thinking, okay, what kind of theme out there it could be interesting to analyze feelings. This is how it started. And to me, it came naturally because at that point, not at that point, but let's say 5 years before, I just finished my master degree in fine arts. And the theme about it, what I was working on, it was about narcissism and Freud analysis and all that kind of stuff that I was using in my topic, let's say, of painting. So the connection immediately, it was made naturally, and everything started to pop up in my mind. And I shared the idea with the guys, and they loved it. So, yeah, this is how it started.
And so, Thanos, games are about farming, games are about killing orcs, games usually aren't about turn-of-the-century psychoanalysis in Vienna. What was your initial reaction to hearing about the idea for the game?
Basically, what happened, Unconscious Mind would be our first game. So, but the initial idea was that it was a modern game about feelings. So, we sat down with Yorgo and we discussed about ideas, and he proposed, okay, let's retheme the game and let's make it more, more unique. And let's talk about the birth of psychoanalysis. And I'm like, oh yeah, this is good. And we started exploring this idea, and we then created all this, a nice prototype for the initial, version of Unconscious Mind.
And so, what kind of research did you have to do? Because I lived in Vienna for 8 years, and when I played the game, it was like taking me back to my former haunts. I mean, what research did you have to do about Vienna at that time before starting the initial conception of the game?
Quite a bit, but not too exhausting, I have to say. We start always with Wikipedia, obviously, and at that time I knew already some things regarding psychoanalysis and Freud. But then we also had some great consultancy help from a couple of people that stepped in, and we always try to approach this topic with sensitivity that it needs regarding the theme, the concept, even the vocabulary that is used for the game. I have to say that in all of our games, we are very interested to use the right approach for the theme, but particularly in this one, we spent quite a bit of time to do it properly. And all of us at any point, we would spot things that we have found and that we should take care of them during the process.
And so, writing an essay about Freud in Vienna in the late 1800s, or talking about your therapy journey, all of that is kind of stuff you see on the internet a lot, dealing with sort of the subject of psychoanalysis. But you rarely see it transformed into game form. What were the first steps into taking this sort of general idea about psychoanalysis and making it into an actual game?
it all started with the input, to be honest. Uh, there was a very rough concept about the um, how this rondel of the input will work and how it's going to activate rows of actions, etc. So yeah, it started from the desk of the professor, and then we explored all the other universe of Vienna, and this is where Johnny stepped in also at some point, and we expanded it even more. So to answer your idea, is basically your player board. This is where it all started.
And from the player board, it went to university because in the original version, the city of Vienna was not present. We had the university. So it was a university like with the different classes and all this stuff.
And so moving on then, Jonny, how did you get involved with the project? And what was your initial thought about a game that is on a very original subject?
So yeah, we were kind of working on what would be the follow-up to Endless Winter, and Yoma was like, hey, I just want you to take a look at this thing. I've got a TTS build. It's, functioning prototype, and just be honest. Tell me what you think. Let's play through it and check out this game. And just like a lot of the prototypes that Yoma builds, they're really nice looking because, the TTS mods are good. They source, good clip art or whatever else they do. And we played through probably, I think, a whole game. So basically it was a functioning game already there, intact. And I came away with it going, oh, this is good. There's a lot of good stuff in here. And I kind of meditated on it and digested what it was, and basically came back and said, I think this is cool. If you guys wanted to put this in as the sophomore effort of Fantasia in the catalog, I think there's legs here. We can work on it. And if you want me to be a developer or, co-designer and like that, we can see ways to kind of push and pull in some of the systems, make some improvements or add stuff or trim some stuff out and that kind of thing. So basically, as soon as I saw it, I liked it and was like, green light for me. Let's do something with this.
Can I add something on that? Just to spice up the background of the game. This game, as Thanos said, it was initially the first one that we're about to sign, and it was like our back in the days when I was co-designing with Kostas and Laskas, and we were pitching our games to other companies, because at that point Fantasia didn't exist. It was one of the hottest designs that we pitched to other companies, and actually it was about to be signed from two very well-known companies at that point. But both of them, they asked us to make some extra development of the game, especially on the university that we were talking about that later became the city of Vienna. So while we were doing that, and while we were in the process with Kostas and Laskas, I came to Thanos and I say, you know what? I mean, this game is so great, and we now have a company. So why the heck are we giving this to someone else when we can do it ourselves? So this is how it happened. It was out there for maybe 1 or 2 years, and in the end, we signed it ourselves.
And Thanos, were you nervous about this, or were you excited about this being your sort of stamp on the board game world?
No, I was not nervous because, as Yorgo said, I was present in those pitchings, and I pitched it myself also without being my game. And fun fact, I went to a huge company as a newbie, my first session ever, and I went there and I pitched the game without knowing it very good. And they're like, we love the theme.
Because we had other meetings and we had to attend other
meetings. I went there, not my design, not my game. I was like, and nobody. And I pitched the game, and I didn't know it very well. I had played it only once. And they're like, oh, the theme is great, but what kind of game is this? Like, is this a game? Are you a designer? I'm like, yeah, kind of. So I, as a publisher, I knew that everybody was loving the theme. And I knew that the game had solid mechanics. So we were talking with Yorgo, and I'm like, dude, what are we doing here? Yeah. So, yeah.
And so, Jonny, then, you have this working prototype, this game that, the people behind it think is hot. What did you bring to that initial conception? And what's really interesting about the game is you see different elements. Coffee is a very important factor. The ink pot is a very important factor. What did you bring to that initial sort of get the ball rolling element about designing this game?
I really focused actually on the user experience parts of it more so than anything right away. So, for instance, the ink pot rondel, which I loved right away, I believe it's a little foggy now, is that you'd actually move the ink pot first based on what you'd previously gone, then it would land on something, fire off the rows, and then you take an action. And it kind of went like a conveyor belt where it would go around these 3 steps. And so if you were to move it 2 times, it would go down 1 and then back up. So what was really happening is this little ink pot was just kind of going, up 1, down 1, or in this little spot. And I felt like I can see the rotation here, but wouldn't it be cool if it actually went in a real circle and therefore maybe needs a couple more nodes on that? So like something like that was like, all right, let's make this actually go in a loop in order to make that feel right. It's going to go down the columns and it's going to kind of come around the corner, hit something, and we actually ended up making it a 5-node loop instead of a 3-node loop. Another one was that the insights, the main resource of the game, were kind of tracked as these different categories of feelings. And you're actually physically exchanging some of one type of bit with the other and putting them back and forth between a couple supplies. So as you would, elevate 2 minor insights into a greater one, you would take away the 2 minor ones, you take a bigger one and put it in a different concentric ring to kind of hold that. And I was like, can we fold this together and actually keep these basically on board in this ring and not have to go back and forth between a supply and just swish these things around into this little dial? So it was kind of like stuff like that where I was trying to minimize excess hand movements or just come up with things that were more intuitive and in some ways more innovative, because we've gotten some really good response to how the resources are handled in this game compared to other games. And it wouldn't really make sense in other games where it's like, I'm going to swish this piece of wood into a stone and then I'm going to push it into a better stone. It's like, that doesn't really make sense. But in this conceptual area where we've kind of got the mind in the middle, the subconscious, and we're radiating out these insights, it works physically and it works conceptually. So that's the kind of stuff I kind of went way down the rabbit hole and was thinking about how to best realize these things across multiple systems like that.
And so, 2 questions really. How did the game change when Jonny came on board? And as Yoma, the initial designer, how is it to have someone new come in and start messing around with your design? Was it difficult to deal with, or were you just like, oh, this is fantastic, all the ideas are great?
Well, I can say that first of all, we had the experience of Endless Winter, how Jonny smoothly stepped in, and he also brought 3 expansions and some modules out of it. So we already knew the process of Jonny. That is going to be great. And at that point, I can let you know that when he stepped in, there was no university, there was no treatises. Regarding concept, it's something that we worked all together, and we about the meeting board. This was one of the biggest challenges in the game, to find what kind of representation the worker placement area is going to have. So it started with something that was called the university, and we struggled about creating all those different actions being a class. But when we realized that, being inside the university is very specific, and it doesn't really demonstrate where the real fun thing at that era was happening, which was basically meetings on the Wednesday meetings or in cafes. And actually, this took, in our second iteration of this concept, that we tried to illustrate a cafe where you are meeting and you're discussing ideas. But again, this felt a bit weird because why would Freud and the other guys would walk around tables on the cafe and talk about ideas? It had some kind of valid point that, there are a group of peoples that you are exchanging ideas, but then the bright idea came and we said, what the heck? I mean, all those meetings that they were happening during Wednesday on a table with ideas that they are shared together, they can be very nicely illustrated with speech bubbles and with papers on the table and what you see now.
So what's interesting, I lived in Vienna for 8 years, and the coffee shop is central to the Viennese identity. Was this something that you found out about through your research, or are you just coffee addicts?
No, it was research, actually. Most of us, me and Yorgo, had been to Vienna already, but you have to research and to know that, okay, this is engraved to Vienna's mentality, like the cafes
and the culture of that era. We actually visited also the house of Freud, and while discussing about the resources of the game, because coffee, it wasn't an initial design, it came up later when Jonny came to the team, to the design of the game. So it came up naturally of, hey, what kind of resource can we use that it can bound things and do wild stuff?
If anyone's watching this and haven't designed a game, one thing I can say is that games do not come out fully formed. Designing games is an iterative process. You start with an initial idea that you think is great, and often at the end of the process, it is very different from your initial idea. So how many iterations did Unconscious Mind go through before you got to the thing that we put on the table today?
At least, I will just say until Jonny came. Until Jonny came, it was like 4 or 5. And then when Jonny came, Jonny?
We probably had 3 biggish sweeps in the development once I came on board, like deciding, it's a meeting table, these are speech bubbles. Then I was like, if the little tails point at different things, we could correlate that with different actions, and we could actually line these up with the Inkpot movement and make a grid out of it. That was big. We iterated on the city map from being a rondelle or being something kind of like the game, like maybe like Newton, where there's a map but you're just kind of going all over these little places instead of a cyclical thing. That took a couple iterations. So there's definitely there's DNA throughout the whole thing that didn't change in certain parts, but there's definitely some things we really tried out and substituted for other things until we landed on what you see now. So I'd say there's 2 or 3-ish pretty big sweeps, and then a lot of work in post as we did expansions, modules, and made sure solo modes there, all this stuff, and sometimes that affects everything else.
The expansion also, it was a big thing, and we had that idea from the very beginning that we want to do something more spooky about the game. So while making the core game, we always had an idea of what is going to happen, what's going to come later with the expansion.
And so the game is on the higher end of complexity for Eurogames. And one decision publishers will make about games is weight, because it then, you base your marketing strategy around that. Why did you decide to go for a more complex game as opposed to a simpler game?
I feel because otherwise it would be a missed opportunity to represent the complexity and the cool complexity of that era and what psychoanalysis was about, all this cultural background behind this story. Otherwise, from the very beginning, it was always a matter of expectation that we had to deal with. As soon as you say that I'm going to make a game that it deals with dreams, everyone would connect you with party games like Dixit or whatever. And on the one hand, that was flattering because those games are pretty cool, but on the other hand, it was very misleading. And we tried really hard to explain that this is not a type of game like this. We are going to take the approach of a strategic, complex game in order to represent this story. And why? Because we think that it never happened before. This is a very straightforward explanation of why we selected this road, this path.
And so, Thanos, what was your role during this development period, getting the game to be a game?
I'm dealing with all the rest of the things apart from playtesting, like to make everyone happy and make sure that the game will be out in like specific time. It's not easy because when you deal with games like this, especially that are so complex, and we have many people that are working in these titles. For example, we have a dedicated playtesting team. We have Jonny as a developer. We have us. We have Yorgo as the art director. We have many people that they need to be, managed somehow. So mostly in the company, me and Yorgo, we are mostly doing, managing the company apart from specific tasks that we have. And that's it basically.
Making sure that the game is fun in the end of the day.
And so my first view of Unconscious Mind was, I think, Essen 2022, where you had a playable demo, and this was pre the Kickstarter campaign, and I guess this was part of the marketing.
Many Essens ago, we have...
in the before times. So what was the initial reaction to the game when you showed it to the gaming public at Essen?
Everyone everyone was excited. So this fueled us and gave us hope that this can be a very good follow-up to Endless Winter.
The crazy thing is that at that point we were presenting and selling Endless Winter, but Unconscious Mind was just a great competitor, and they were I can say more interested to hear about Unconscious Mind, which is kind of weird because the other game was ready to pick and they were more interested to play a prototype. This was a great sign for us that it's going to be big, and that's why we never hesitated to invest regarding artwork, regarding production, regarding presentation on Kickstarter. We made the most grandiose campaign that we could do at that point.
And Jonny, were you nervous about putting your game in front of the public, relatively sort of early in the process?
I'm pretty brave about this stuff because I'm I always circle back to this. I'm just really, really concerned with usability and user experience and stuff like that. And any opportunity to just get tons and tons of people to play the thing right in front of me and who willingly want to do it instead of being like, hey, will you guys come over if I buy enough pizza and beer and you'll play this broken game of mine? But to have people opt in that kind of self-select for the type of people who would want to play said game to sit there and play it. And sometimes, it's going to be people from Dice Tower and they're effectively forming opinions about it while I'm also just trying to come away with basically playtest data. But I like that. And similarly, we brought a couple prototypes to Essen this time around, and I was kind of like a hawk just hanging around the unfinished games, more so than sitting here self-congratulating, going like, oh, look at all these people who are loving Unconscious Mind right now. I was just really hovering around the prototypes going like, okay, who is waiting in line to play this prototype? Why do they want to play it so much? What was their experience after they got up from playing it based on what they thought sitting down? So similarly, I was really enjoying teaching and watching the first physical trials of that prototype at Essen 22. And then 23, we're showing off effectively a very late stage prototype that still had some refinements to be done. And that was, confirming certain changes that we'd made, whether they worked well or not. And then, here we fast forward again, we finally released the thing and seeing it in the wild now, which is really, really exciting.
So let's talk about one of the most striking aspects of the game. And it was one of the things that most people knew about Unconscious Mind going into the Kickstarter campaign, was that this was a game that didn't have one artist, it had two artists. And you had two domains. You had the domain of reality and you had the domain of dreams. And one artist was taking on one domain, one artist was taking on the other. And that sort of piqued a lot of people's interest. It was something that a lot of people were talking about. When did you come up with this initial idea? And then how did you choose which artists to tackle which domain?
Okay, I can talk about that. This is a great example of how a problem can become a great idea, and a great solution can come out of a problem. So I can let you know that our first plan was to work with Andrew Bosley for the whole game, right? We approached him for the first time. We now have a great collaboration, as you know, with Andrew. We consider him our friend, but back in the days, it was the first approach. And we're Fantasia. We'd like to have our next title. It's called Unconscious Mind. It's about dreams, etc. And the reason we approached Andrew is because we felt that his style will, and we were right on that, it will illustrate amazingly the dream world, the dream cards. But with the dream cards, we were expecting that he will do the rest. At that point, Andrew was busy though, and he told us, you know what, guys, this game is very ambitious. I love the theme. I want to participate, but I'm quite busy. Would you like to maybe find another artist that we can share the work, or I can introduce you some people that I have worked with before. But still, at that point, the idea was that they will just share the amount of work in the game. Nothing conceptually wise. It was proposed. So we sit down with the guys and we start thinking, okay, what can we do, etc., etc. And between us, this idea struck us that, hey, what if we split the concept and we have someone that is taking the real world and someone is taking the dream world, and actually the guy that is going to take the real world is going to be someone that is going to bring perfectly the vibe of Vienna of that era. And who's that guy? Vincent Dutret is like the perfect guy for that. So yeah, again, I'm highlighting how problems sometimes can become an amazing idea.
And so, were they both happy? Or was there times where Andrew would go, I want to draw a chaise longue in Vienna, and Vincent would go, oh, I just want to draw a skull puking rainbow vomit, or anything like that? Or were they happy?
To be honest with you, when we had the first meeting, and basically both of them said, yes, we want to do that. And we had the meeting all together. It was me, Yorgo, I don't remember if Jonny was there, and it was Andrew Bosley, and Vincent Dutret. I was like, dude, are we doing this? So what struck me was that the amount of, they did not have ego. Respect for each other.
The amount of respect they had for each other.
Yeah. If I was Vincent Dutret or Andrew Bosley, I would have an ego, but they were like, no, they were listening. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. So everything went smoothly, as far as we know. We didn't have any issues or whatever.
And so, to what degree do you think that this artist collaboration and making a feature of this artist collaboration added to the success of the game on crowdfunding?
Hard to tell. Maybe 50%. I don't know.
But you think it was a significant factor, yeah?
A lot of people talk about it is one of the most beautiful box covers they've ever seen. It's featuring two artists, which is, there are other games that use multiple artists. Somebody did the board, somebody did the character cards and other things like this. It's been done, but I think the fact that it was showcased in a way, and we used two really significant artists. And I think there's a tacit thing that we haven't even talked about too much, is that if Vincent's doing the real world stuff, the historical stuff, he's also an artist that uses, he's not just a digital artist. He still uses, colored pencils and paints and all this stuff and gouache and scans in a lot of his work. So in a sense, you got this very analog approach to his real world art is being used for the real world stuff. And it has a certain artifact and feel of that. You look close enough, you will see things from the paper texture and stuff like that. And then you get Andrew, who's primarily a digital artist, and so you kind of think conceptually it's like the digital realm is all out there, right? It's there's nothing really tangible about it. And I kind of think that is playing a part, that those two styles are kind of really, really working together, and that there's enough contrast between them to make it noteworthy. But then there's enough blend that it all came together by using certain tricks, color palettes, and knowing where one artist begins and the next one takes off. Like on the box cover, there was, kind of a little red line at one point, basically saying like Vincent draws in this area, Andrew draws in that area, and they kind of merged where those things and had some areas where things were going to feather and overlap. And it was kind of fun to see those transition points were very cool. And then there's a set of cards where both artists worked on them, which is really cool. If you check out the illusion cards there, there's elements where they again interact with each other, and those are some of my favorite cards in the game because they look so cool.
And so this has all been great. You're all fascinating people, but let's talk about me for a bit. So when you get to the Kickstarter campaign, what is striking is the Kickstarter video is brilliant. It's like a sort of independent film project on its own.
The mind is like an iceberg. It floats with 1/7 of its bulk above water. An uncanny effect often arises when the boundary between fantasy and reality is blurred, when we are faced with the reality of something that we have until now considered imaginary. Dreams are the royal road to the unconscious mind. It was he, Sigmund Freud, the one who first established the revolutionary theories of psychoanalysis. He invited a small group of followers to meet at his apartment every Wednesday. We would gather to drink coffee, share notes, and discuss ideas about the mind. Those who visited us ranged from everyday people to some of the most famous personalities of Vienna. By delving into their dreams, we could bring forward new insights and help our clients recover from their traumas. As our movement grew, we rose beyond the confines of our private meetings and practices. We entered the social circles of Vienna, from cafes and libraries to theaters and opera houses. Then, to bring our discoveries to the world at large, we wrote articles and published scholarly treatises. All of this built our names and furthered our reputations as the pioneers of Freudian psychology.
And it is underscored by one of the greatest German accents ever committed to tape. How did you get the idea for the trailer, and how did you get the idea to call an unknown British voice actor based in Germany?
Well, regarding you, it was a suggestion of Jonny, because back in the days, I don't think that we knew you personally. So we were struggling to find a German accent that we like. By the way, shout out to Oniro and George that did this amazing video. And he proposed to us some websites where we can apply and offer, let's say, this concept to people that they can give samples with an accent. But we were not happy with the result, and Jonny at that point proposed you as an alternative. We talked together, you know the story, but it's good to share. We talked a bit together, me and Ben, and I tried to explain to him this slow very dull, let's say, intro feeling. And once we explained this together, he just did it like, immediately. And it was a piece of cake for us to work to have the result that we needed. And it was a love at first sight, I can say, regarding this voiceover.
So you're essentially saying the success of Unconscious Mind is solely down to me?
99%, let's say.
Yeah, it was striking how good your first sample was. I remember we asked you to do something, and I felt like it was like almost instantly you came back and sent us part of the script, and it was like boom, you knocked it out of the park. This is gonna be great, and we all just had a big sigh of relief. And then it was just really a matter of like Yorgo basically like had a storyboard sort of thing where a series of images that would kind of, zooms in here, it's going to go there. And we were kind of writing the script to go along that. And I was helping with the script, and then kind of having, Ben come in there and think about the timing of when these transitions will carry over and stuff like that. And relatively, I mean, it kind of came together quickly considering how detailed and cool that video is. It's I think it's a pretty smooth process.
And sort of how necessary do you think it is now within the current gaming landscape to have something of that quality? Whereas, if you go back 10 years, if there was a Kickstarter video at all, it would be some guy going, "Oh no, here's my game, there's bits and that." Whereas now, they are full-scale productions. Thanos, how important is that to getting your game noticed in the Kickstarter?
It all adds up to the overall feeling and image of the game and the universe you want to create. For example, we could take stock music, for example. Let's say, but we do not do that. I'm a music producer. We have music producers working for us and creating, for example, Unconscious Mind, I could not write this kind of music, like music in the 1900s. But we have the people of doing that. We could easily choose, for example, the easy path and take stock music. But, it might not affect anything, and we might, the Kickstarter would be the same, like so successful. But it adds up to the how can I say, quality we want to offer to our backers, to our clients.
And the passion behind the project that we select to work with. This explains to you why most of the times we select to add more instead of going in the lighter, streamlined, super streamlined game. It's because we're not. It's not enough for us. It doesn't give us enough space to say the story.
So let's move on to the Kickstarter. The Kickstarter did incredibly well, getting over 100 million. 100 million? Sorry, over 1 million. I mean, 100 million would be amazing. So it did over 1 million. Were you surprised at the success of the Kickstarter, or was that sort of what you factored into the campaign?
Yes and no. When you see that the game, has hype, can be successful, you always say, you have it in the back of your mind, okay, this is going to go well. But at the same time, you never know. So we are always cautious because we don't want to be disappointed. And, we keep, we play safe. So, yeah, we were surprised, to be honest with you, when we started, when we saw this reception to be solidified and realized that this reception is real.
And we heard, we know about a lot of horror stories about games that they were expecting to do great and with huge productions and with a big audience, and then they go to Kickstarter for one reason or another. It's a flop, and we always need to remind ourselves that the amount of risks that we are taking. That's why this is a behind the curtain information, but it's good to share with other publishers out there, just so they know. Even with the success of Endless Winter that we had as our first title, that it surpassed the million after the Pledge Manager, etc. We never touched those funds for ourselves. We were always cautious with Thanos that those funds are not us. We are going to deliver the game, and then we are going to see what's left. You have to be super careful with that, and we are glad we did it, because after that, COVID happened. Shipments were, it was this crazy situation with freight and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, we are always careful. Let's say that, bottom line.
And Jonny, so back in the day, Kickstarters were about kickstarting dreams. And so it was ideas that would then be realised with the money. If you look at modern games now, most of them are essentially finished before they go to Kickstarter. And Kickstarter is to fund production. What was your role post the Kickstarter campaign up until the release? How finished was the game, and what was your role in making sure that it was perfect before you press the button on printing?
We had enough front-facing stuff to obviously launch a good campaign, some solid ideas, beautiful prototypes, and all that. But there is a significant amount of stuff that was not finished yet. There is a reason why we knew that going into it. Like, for instance, the solo mode was very much a wireframe at that point. Like, I was basically telling backers at a certain reveal point, like, how the bot would work, what the mechanisms would be, what levers we could pull to adjust the difficulty and things like that. But it needed a significant amount of work, right? So we didn't have a playable solo mode available for backers to go on, like, say, TTS and play during the campaign. This was something that we worked on in post. The Nightmares expansion had some very concrete things that we knew were going to work, like the alternate dials with the cracks in them and that sort of stuff. But there's still a lot of things with how those decks of cards would work, just how everything would tie together, some of the modules, exactly the nature of the modules, and that kind of thing. So there was a lot of work in post in the game, just because it is a huge game with a lot of sprawling things, and we needed to make sure that all those sprawling things were compatible across things. So if we had a module and then it was like, wait a second, solo players want to play with everything. If they're going to spend this amount of money to buy a big game for themselves to play by themselves, they don't want to end up buying a whole bunch of stuff that they can't play with. And so we understood that we need to also make all these promo cards or whatever these things are solo compatible as well. And that takes time. You do have to test it. You do have to write the rules for how that module goes. And then you have to have a small little paragraph saying, in a solo game, you have to do this, and this as well. So you add all that up, and it's a lot of work in post. So compared to some companies where it's basically print ready and they turn it over, this was one of those things where we had a huge amount of really good stuff done, but there was a ton to be done as well. And one of the other things that we offered was some of the backers were able to pledge for a special tier to have their dreams illustrated by Andrew Bosley. So again, we couldn't have those done before the campaign until we actually had Bosley talk with the people and create those extra cards and put those in place. So there was a fair amount of artwork that was not done. It was just basically a placeholder until we knew that those tiers would be filled in. So it was a lot, actually. It was definitely not a pre-order system for this game. They were funding a dream, and there was a lot of work to be done afterwards. And we did take a lot of feedback from backers, TTS people, what their expectations were, and did make some adjustments to the game and post even some based on, say, Rado's feedback. He did a video for it, but if he has a little nitpick, it's like, it's not too late to fix it. Why not? Let's get in there and do it.
And so it had its big debut at Essen this year. I mean, obviously the backers, I noticed on social media the backers were starting to receive their copies and all of that sort of stuff. But for the public, it had its big debut at Essen this year. What was the reaction to the game?
It was, we were surprised, actually, that for the third time that we were presenting the game at Essen, the amount of interest was not reduced by, at all. It was still on the top 10 hot list of Spiel. The previous years was even top 3, something like that. And yeah, as I said, the amount of people that they wanted to try and demo the game, it was really impressive. It's something that we don't plan to do in the future, to have 3 SNs before we release the game. But it was very interesting to see that people haven't lost their interest in the game. And it's not something that it could happen to any other game, to be honest.
Yeah, like it was basically like appointment only. So people would come up and say, "Oh, I want to play this game." It wasn't just a matter of just waiting for people to clear up from their chairs and just sit in the chair because it was like, "Okay, can I play this?" It's like, yes, maybe Saturday at noon if you have that open. So we were sending people back to schedule their tests, and we would have people waiting to see if there was a cancellation. So that, if that kind of speaks to it, is like there was very, very few just walk-in availabilities to demo our games. That's true of even the prototypes that we brought there. Is people were just, we were turning people away or telling them to, get on the wait list, come back at a certain time, and they would come back at that time. They actually they would come back a day later at a designated time, sit down and play the game because they were that interested in seeing it at the show.
And so, what has the feedback from players been since the game came out?
Oh, they hated it. Oh my god.
So yeah, we've been getting about 40 new BGG ratings per day since Essen, and it's still being released at the time of this recording. There's still a lot of the US hasn't got their copies yet. Like our fulfillment services, people are getting it. They're doing unboxings and things like that. But we're getting between 30 and 50 new ratings a day, which is exciting because I could open up the app in the morning and just scroll down and be like, oh my gosh, these are all new ratings. And what's exciting is it's a lot of 8s, 9s, and 10s, and it's just like really pushing up there. And at the time of this recording, it's holding it at 8.1 on BGG, which I think is amazing because a lot of people don't give 10s because 10 is the perfect game and the perfect game doesn't exist. And to them, 9.5 is as high as they'll ever go, or 9 is as high as they'll ever go. And we're getting a lot of 9s and stuff like that. So I feel like there's a lot of that. Now, one thing I'm curious about is there's a lot of, if you look at the 10s and you look at the comments, it's like maybe 1 out of 20 people actually puts a comment on there. So we don't know exactly what their experience was, but through reading the forums, by looking at Facebook posts, Instagram posts, a lot of people are really responding well to it. A lot of people are playing it solo and responding well to the bot. And I think the only one thing that people say is it's a lot of setup and it is a very big game. It is beautiful. It will turn heads, but it is a big game and it will take your entire table to play it. And so it's like, yes, the footprint is large. It's one of those things. So if you compare it more to like a Lacerda sized game or something like that, expect a big game. So it's there's no hiding that it's, you're going to play this on a small coffee table in Vienna. It's just not going to fit.
And so is the Unconscious Mind story complete, or is there a future for the game in terms of extra content, or are you just going to push it as the game as it is?
We're going to give some time to the audience to digest the game and share their opinion. We don't want to pre-plan things for the future. This is what we did for Endless Winter. We want to give it some time to grow in the mind of everyone. And we will see if we are excited and people are excited to see more on that realm. We will be more than happy to revisit it.
So I want you all now to think about when you entered the process of the game. And you all entered the process of the game at different times. But when you think about your initial ideas for the game, your initial dreams for the game, I guess is a better way to phrase it. To what degree did you fulfill your expectations? And let's go in chronological order with this. So let's start with Yoma.
I can say I couldn't expect for something more than what we have achieved, to be honest. I mean, the game it's received greatly from the audience and from reviewers back in the day that they have checked the demo, the prototypes. We are very interested to see what are the final reviews now that we have the game out there. But still, there were many milestones that this game already reached without even being out in the market. For example, it got the second, I think, the best cover in Dice Tower, art cover last year. Second, when they compared the winner of the previous year, right? It was the first for that year, but second when they compared the two finalists of the previous years. So also in many anticipation lists being top one, a potential game of the year to many lists. So yeah, I mean, it can go higher. I know that, but already I couldn't ask for more from this game when we have decided to basically steal it from the companies that it was about to be signed.
Yeah, I always want more, like lasers, like dinosaurs we had put in the game, like crazy stuff. No, yeah. Also, I agree with Yorgo. Right now, to be honest with you, Unconscious Mind, what I want from Unconscious Mind is to stay relevant as a game, personally, and not be like a cultural phenomenon, like for a couple of months, and then let's say die out. So this is what I want, basically. I do not want any awards. I don't care about awards. If they come, okay, they're welcomed. But I want the game to stay relevant and people enjoy it for many years.
Jonny?
Yeah, I definitely wanted to have tails. I think that's why we put so much extra effort into certain details that would pertain to, like, is it good solo? Is it good with the expansions? All these things. Does it have staying power for a lot of reasons is important. From the designer developer standpoint, I definitely know that this game is probably one of the heaviest games I've worked on, right? So it's right now it's kind of lingering around 4.0. It's like, people are comparing it to Lacerda, weight and scope and size and depth of a game, and thematic integration, all that sort of stuff. But my design aesthetic a lot of times is, yes, I like lots of mini games and lots of things going on, but I do like everything in its own way to be very intuitive and all that. So one of the challenges was like, if we can make this really big, really complex, all these other things, is nothing should be superfluous or counterintuitive just for the sake that we can add complexity to it. So I was always trying to push things in one way, and I guess there's a little phrase which is like, make the game as complex as necessary, but no more so. Or inversely, we could say make it as simple as possible, but no simpler. And there's going to be something within there. And I feel like because we were able to solve certain, say, gameplay problems and make something very streamlined, we would use that extra space for the player's cognitive load or something to then bring something else in that was cool and fun and exciting. So it's like we didn't have to do transparent cards and overlay those and have this compounded thing. We could have just done client cards that just had that, and they existed in the first several iterations until I came on board. But it was one of those things where it's like, let's use a cool, weird component. Let's do some neat stuff with the art with it. Let's make it make sense that these will work mathematically. And yes, it's a little extra work. We have to like take these out, play some of the clients. There's got to be some extra rules how they go. But it also afforded us to do some kind of, I think, innovative things where it's like, we felt like just doing contract fulfillment. Just, here's a client, I'm going to pay these resources, and I'm going to do the next one, and or I cured the most clients, I win the game. Is like the fact that we wanted to come back and revisit the same client through multiple therapy sessions, and the transparent card was a perfect medium to kind of be like, all right, let's show this scary stuff that's over the client, and once we work them to catharsis, which is a big deal in the Freudian thing, it's like we were going to remove this grief layer and then show the beautiful art underneath, and then we'll finally cure the client, in which case it goes into your tableau and it unlocks their scoring and all their other stuff. So this kind of layered process yes, that's more complex than what it could have been, but I think thematically it was justified, and I think mechanically it allowed us to do some interesting things where even though there's not that many client cards, there's not that many transparent layers in the game, but the how many combinations there possibly can be, it's one of those things where the universe will probably die by heat death by the time people play the exact same subset of cards comes out in their particular game. So there's things like that. So I love the fact that we got to make a very heavy game, but the most streamlined heavy game I could possibly imagine. And I think I'd hope that people are coming away going, oh, this is big. There's a lot of moving parts, but it clicks. Once you play a couple turns, it makes sense. Your goals make sense. What you do in a turn makes sense. And you're not just constantly feeling like, am I doing this wrong? Should we go back to the rule book? I'm paralyzed by uncertainty. I feel like they engage with it relatively quick for the weight of game it is, and I'm very excited about that.
Which is one of the most repetitive feedback that we get. That the once you start playing the game after some rounds, you just turns, you just get it. Everything starts to click.
So just to wrap up then, are there any people that you'd like to thank? So you three are here, you're talking about the game, but, to raise a game takes a village. So are there any people you'd like to thank that maybe players aren't aware of what they did and who they are?
Freud.
No, basically we have a lot of people working with us. So, we want to thankfully thank our internal playtesters that worked all these months on this game. The collaborators for this project, I don't remember the name, Vadim, that they were consultants. Yeah, they were consultants.
Yeah.
And basically all the community.
All of the credits are in the back of the rule book. We have everyone listed there properly. But
basically all the community that totally embraced our games all these years.
We do this out of passion. We do this for the gamers first, and we are very excited that they finally get their copies, and we cannot hear the reactions.
Yoma, Thanos, Jonny, thank you very much.
You're welcome, man.
Thank you.
Thank you.